One of the things that I want you to see is that you are actually the greatest influence on your child, not because you're the one who gets to lecture them or get on to them or nag them or monologue, as my children say. But you're the greatest influence on your child because you are able to have conversations. Like it says in Deuteronomy, we share with our children day and night all the time, but you're able to have conversations with your kids. You're able to spend time with them. It's targeted time. It's unintentional time. It's purposeful time. It's a little bit of everything. But what speaks volume to your children is the real life examples that you give them. We always enjoy authentic people. Well, your children see your authentic self. And so you really are teaching them about everything in your life by your own life. And that's why you have a greater influence than anyone else.
Welcome to our intentional parenting conversation. My name is Zach Bowden. I'm here with Kim Parrish. And so thanks for being here, Kim. Our intentional parenting conversation is an opportunity to help you as parents win in every phase with your kids. Our heart is once a month that we will release a new episode giving you the tools you need to help you as parents to win every phase with your kids. So, Kim, today our topic is what?
It's going to be intentional parenting.
Oh, I need this.
Yes, being aware of the influence that you have on your kid's life.
Yeah, so I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I need this conversation. And so introduce yourself. You're Kim Parrish, your Children's Ministry Director here at New Life, and tell us more. Yes,
I'm wife to Ben and mother of an 18-year-old daughter, a 17-year-old son, 16-year-old son, and 5-year-old son. And I desperately need this as well.
That's great. So intentional parenting, kind of the impact we have as parents. Why? Why is this important for us to understand?
You know, I hear from so many parents in different ways where parents are so worried about the influence that the culture has on their life. And I love the way Doug Fields put it in his book to say that we don't nearly need to be as worried about as much as the cultural influence on our kids as our own influence. And if we are valuing our influence on the kids, then the culture will not be able to speak to our children. They were designed by God to be influenced by us because they're gifts to us from the Lord, and He designed them to be influenced by us. And so, but we have to remember that and step up to the plate, but value our own influence in their life.
That's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard. Like, I even noticed now in my daughter, we've pushed her to do gymnastics for a while, and she decided she wouldn't do it. And so she's stopped doing gymnastics.
Yeah.
Now her friends are doing gymnastics. She's like, oh, maybe I want to do gymnastics. I'm like, wait a second. No, we wanted you to do that.
Yeah, I joke with my kids and say, I'm going to quit saving money for your college and just put it in therapy because I've messed up so many times. So it's like, what does it mean and how do we value that? And I'm not calling you to be a perfect parent.
Yeah, no.
I'm calling you to be a parent with a plan and to be an intentional parent because you see how great your influence is going to be.
So how do we understand our influence? Mm-hmm. And then how do we not like be a dictator? Because that's not what influence is. But then how do we actually show our influence to our kids? What does that look like for us?
One of the things that I want you to see is that you are actually the greatest influence on your child, not because you're the one who gets to lecture them or get on to them or nag them or monologue, as my children say. But you're the greatest influence on your child because you are able to have conversations. Like it says in Deuteronomy, we share with our children day and night all the time, but you're able to have conversations with your kids. You're able to spend time with them. It's targeted time. It's unintentional time. It's purposeful time. It's a little bit of everything. But what speaks volume to your children is the real life examples that you give them. We always enjoy authentic people. Well, your children see your authentic self. And so you really are teaching them about everything in your life by your own life. And that's why you have a greater influence than anyone else. But what do you want that influence to be for?
What are some of the challenges maybe you face? I definitely share the ones that I face, but what are some challenges for us that prevent us from actually influencing our kids?
I think it's because we don't take it serious enough. A lot of times we want quick fixes. I mean, this is something from the time they're born till they're 18 years old. We have our greatest influence as they're younger. It slowly begins to fade as they get older, but our influence is totally different after 18. And so what I think hurts us the most is that's an 18-year commitment to making an influence on a child's life.
Sometimes longer.
And sometimes longer, yes. And so, but we don't always if you're going to enter in a commitment for that long, we think sometimes that our goal is let's just get them raised and get them out here and to be functioning human beings. But to really harness the influence that you're going to have on your child, it takes a plan. It just takes being intentional. It doesn't take being perfect, but it's being intentional and having a plan for what you want the end goal to be.
Yeah. So you talk about a plan, and even in our children's ministry here at New Life and our student ministries as well, we have this thing called phase. And even what is that plan, and what does that look like for us as parents to be intentional? What do our kids need? What do they need us for in the different phases of their life?
So I would say, first of all, especially when you have a plan, that means what do we want the end goal to be? Yeah. So you as a single parent or you and your spouse, sit down and have a conversation. Say, what do we want our kids to have in the end? We want them to be competent. We want them to have high character. We want them to be caring. We want them to know the Lord. Whatever you want those end goals to be is what you want to work towards. And then in the different phases of their life, let me back up a second and say the phases are just opportunities for us to have distinct opportunities to leverage the changes or the influence we want to have in our children's life. And so when we look at that, we have 963 weeks in a child's life, 936 weeks in a child's life. And just being aware that every moment and every phase that we pass through, we want to be intentional. So while they are younger, we have a greater influence in just helping them feel safe, helping them feel loved, encouraging their confidence. Through the years, it's showing them that they have value, especially in middle school, and they just want to be seen and heard, giving them value. And then up through the high school, letting them know that they do have purposes and what we see in them and pouring into them as an encouragement. So at different phases and different stages, they need things, but it is only 936 weeks, and every week is an opportunity. You're not always going to be perfect, but having that end stage plan, we have that huge marble jar. You'll see marbles in our hallways, and that's just to remind parents that your influence is changing through the years. Your influence is going down some. So how do we be most intentional with the 936 weeks we have?
Yeah, it's interesting because that's a significant thing for us, because sometimes as parents we don't want to change,
right?
Because even though our kids are changing and the phases they're walking through are different, and what they need from us is different. But sometimes we want to hold on to the phase that they just were in,
yes,
and not adjust to that,
yes.
And so what are some of those big significant phases that our kids need from us? Sorry.
Don't you like I'm not ready for that. Like that's not what this isn't about. The only thing about phases.
Oh, sorry. This was, I was like,
the only thing about phases was the 936 weeks.
Sorry.
I was like, okay, wait, I don't have the phases off the top of my head. I told you what I had off the top of my head.
I just was having a conversation.
Sorry, I didn't mean to mess you up.
No, you're fine. I just was having a good conversation.
We can do that.
No, that's fine. It's okay.
Do we have to restart the whole thing?
No.
Okay, wait, hold on. I can tell, like, that every year is different, so it's the engagement. I've already said those things. Okay, yeah, so we can pick up.
No.
Okay.
What question do I ask now?
You just totally threw me off.
Yeah.
Then, so the biggest piece is, well, that's good, I'm glad, and we can go there. We probably do need to do one of these on the phases.
That'd be really good.
Yeah, we probably should do that. So, but we were going to follow this book this time, so that was So the next piece is just like being aware that they're watching you with your finances, your integrity, how you treat people. It's like what a real life example,
modeling people,
like, or that's your role model.
Okay, I could go there.
This is kind of. But is it better to do the face thing?
It's okay.
Well, I mean, I have it. Is that a better intro?
No,
okay.
Go.
Okay.
You're good. All right, I'll ask a different question.
So, yeah. So for this one is just recognizing what an influence you are.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of how I prepared this one.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Okay.
Kim, there's lots of ways we could influence our kid, good and bad.
Yes.
Hopefully, mostly good. It's easy to say that, but what are some real practical things that our kids need our influence in?
So it's that end mind and game, keeping the end game in mind and where you want them to be in 18 years. One of the things that we panic about, and the reason why I think makes us check out, is we begin to say, I'm not doing this well. I'm not a great person. My kids just saw me blow up at their mom, or they just saw me lie about something. Whatever it is, that is okay. But it's the fixing it. It's them seeing you come back and apologize to mom. It's them saying you know what? I told a lie no matter how big or small it was, and I shouldn't do that. And so if you're trying to raise kids that love the Lord, if you want to raise kids that have character, if they have strong convictions, that they're kind, that they're competent individuals, well, that makes a good adult, right? So those are the things we want to be in our own life. And again, it's not to be perfect, but it is recognizing, if you're the teacher, if you're the influencer, what is my life reflecting in my children? The easy, it goes through my head and my heart is, I'm not good enough. So that how am I going to reflect this well to my kid? Like, I'm struggling in some of those areas. Yeah.
Speak to that lie. It's a lie that we all believe in at times.
It is.
Speak to that to us as parents.
So I would say the most important thing with that is recognizing that you're not perfect. And the number one priority on our list is that our children would know the Lord. That's a part of setting priorities in our life. So our relationship with God, our relationship with our spouse, if you're married, and then our relationship with our children, and then everything else after that, church and everything else. So if we're setting those priorities, and you're going to reflect that. So you're not perfect. So number one, you're going to teach your kids, it's okay that you're not perfect. We're not trying to raise perfect children, but we want to raise children with character and children that love God, and they know that they are loved by a loving God. So to have them see the greatest influence you can have in your kid's life is for the children to see what Jesus has done in you. My kids have seen the most horrible, ugly pieces of me, but my children would also tell you, they could probably daily tell you this, that one of their ways that they know God is real is because of how they've seen God change their mom and they've seen God change their dad. So letting them see a firsthand knowledge of what God is doing in your life and admitting, yeah, man, dad struggled with that, but dad acknowledged it. They saw dad ask God for help, even asked them to help pray for you for that. And they saw how God worked in your life. But your life and your influence of them seeing God in you is going to have the greatest influence.
It's easy to say, oh, of course. That's really scary.
Yeah, it is.
That's really scary to let people, not just let people in, but let your own kids into those places that God is redeeming us still. And so lean in that a little more, like why, and then how do we let people in? How do we let our kids into those moments to be part of God's redeeming power in our lives?
I think so much of life, and please know, I am not an expert at this. I do not have this all figured out. We don't even know if I'm going to have real successful children or not because they're just graduating high school. But I do know that I have kiddos that love the Lord, and I only know what I feel like God has taught me in my life. And so that's just what I'm sharing from, is what God has shown me. But I feel like sometimes if you go back into like the 1950s and 60s where kids never saw parents argue, okay? They never did understand that in marriage that there was conflict, right? So then when like our generation began to get married and there was conflict, we almost didn't know what to do with it because we'd never seen healthy conflict. That's part of what we're saying. And like your kids' influence on your life is everything that they do see, you're going to influence them. So it's okay to admit to your child, you know what? I just lied and told that waitress that you were under 9 so we could get a free meal on Kids Eat Free night. And that's not okay. Please forgive me for that. And I'm going to ask them to go ahead and charge me for that. But they see you own things. But it's also okay to them to see you wrestle. They saw that you had a confrontation with your spouse, but then to come back and say, I know you saw the way that mom was snarky with dad. Please forgive me for that. That was a really bad example. Just being truly honest. But if we don't own it in front of them, they're then only going to see, oh, it's okay that I lie about this, or it's okay that I do that. But anytime you're an influence, it is a reminder that it's a heart issue. We want to make sure that we have prioritized that relationship with God so that we are reflecting and influencing our children in those ways.
And then speak to the other lie that would come to mind. This is, I've really lost my influence with my kids, where they're 6 years old and I've just been not engaged and I've lost that trust in a sense, or they're 13, 15, 16 and I mean, I could say this type of conversation and they just walk right past me. Like speak to the parent who feel like they've lost influence with their kid completely.
So I can say this from experience because there's been some decisions that have been made in our life with mine and my husband that really kind of took us out of the realm of we felt like being a good influence in our kids' life. And there were some times where we really just had to step away from parenting and just really focus on our marriage. And so when we kind of came out of that season, we felt like we had lost our influence with our kids, but we hadn't. And they really craved it even more. And I would even say now, oh my goodness, 17-year-old boys, the last thing they want to hear is their mom nagging at them. And so sometimes I try to hang on to my influence and say, but wait, did I teach you this? Did I tell you this? And that's not it. It is them watching me that has that influence. And I can tell you by the way that they pursue me, by the way they watch me, that the things that they comment on, that they are still watching, because really they were designed to be influenced by you. And they crave that. If you asked any teenager what they want more from their parent, it was more time, more of learning about this, more of kids crave that. And so as long as you're willing to give it, they might not act like they want it, but they do, and they really are hungry for your influence.
Maybe the last comment I'll have, I mean, you might have a response back. Like what I hear you saying more than any of this is the importance of a relationship you as a parent you have with your kid. And so we're recording this a little before Christmas, and it'll actually be published a little bit after Christmas. So we're just in this Christmas celebration. It really is that sense how Jesus left heaven, came as a humble servant, as a baby, to live among us. And what a great illustration for us as parents. Is to say, sometimes what my daughter wants to do is the last thing I want to do. Sometimes how my son wants to be an annoying 4-year-old sometimes, or I'm just tired, like, and he wants to go run. I'm like, all right, just how important that is of just stepping into their life. Because without that, how important that relationship we need to have with our kids to have influence in their lives. Influence is not just standing like from the sidelines and barking out orders,
right,
or telling them what to do.
Right.
It's being involved and engaged with them.
Yes.
And that's the importance. If we're going to be good parents and win at every phase, to influence well, we got to have a relationship that goes really well.
Right. I would also say to that we have to recognize no matter what your decision is, you have an influence. Whether it is a bad influence or good influence, that is your decision. So it's not that you're deciding to be an influence. It's you're deciding what kind of influence you're going to have on your child. And the other piece to that is I think this is why having that end game in mind, it's so easy when children are young to be so focused on just making them happy, because they're a lot more pleasant to be around when they're happy. But really, what am I teaching them here? So maybe I'm going to make a small sacrifice that they're going to be, it may be a rough afternoon, but this is a lesson that we're going to learn as we go do something we don't want to do, or we're going to serve someone, or we're going to take a moment to slow down and be kind to our sibling, or whatever we feel like is being called in that moment. So it's easy in those phases to think, let's just make them happy and give them such a fun childhood. But that's really not going to help you in the end goal. Like, fun is a part of it. You want them to know that.
Absolutely.
But then what are those other pieces that we want to put in there? But that's why that recognizing it's 936 weeks. What do we want the end game of this to look like?
Yeah, that's good. Think of a car. You put a car in neutral. It's not going to stay still. It's either going forward or it's going backwards.
Right.
And that's what our influence is.
Yes.
And stuff. So any last thoughts, Kim, as we kind of wrap up this conversation about us being influencers and as parents?
You know, I know it's a daunting task, and I would just say you have to remember that God did create you to be your child's parent, but he didn't create you to do it alone. And that when you spend time with the Lord and when you're walking in his grace and his mercy, he's going to show you and he's going to help you be a good influence. It's just your decision to walk with him and being intentional in your kid's life to be that good influence.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to our Intentional Parenting Conversation, where we want to help you win as parents in every phase with your kid. However we can best support you as parents, please let us know. If you found value in this episode or any of other episodes, We would appreciate it if you would subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or many other locations where you can find this podcast. More importantly, please share this podcast with anyone you think could benefit from it. I'm Zach and Bowden.
And I'm Kim Parrish.
And thank you for listening.